could dream of fights like this, but very seldom do they live up to the expectation. This is even more than you could dream of. Just imagine if you bought a ticket. Stop it, Frank. You can stop it anytime.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Dance Under Those Lights. This week's show is a monster. Robert Diaz spent 15 years at Golden Boy and worked alongside Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, and the likes of Canelo Alvarez, Deontay Wilder, Ricky Hatton, and the fighter with whom he'll always have a unique bond, the great Marco Antonio Barrera. This show takes us on an epic journey with one of the most influential characters over the last 20 years of the sport. In addition to charting his career in boxing, we also cover his special relationship with the UK boxing scene and his passion for the positive impact the sport has on communities around the world, and much more. Robert's now president of Sheer Sports and is involved in managing young fighters. So we talk about one of his own, Lamont Roach, who has a huge fight coming up against Gervonta Tank Davis, as well as the incredible card in Riyadh for Beterbiev Bivol 2 this coming weekend. Looking back to last week, thanks to Andy Clark, a superb guest and an absolute gentleman, and everyone who's supported episode 1. Thanks for bearing with me through a few tech issues on the sound there. I'm working hard to improve the production quality, I promise. So without further ado, let's get to Robert Diaz.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Robert Diaz, been described by none other than Bernard Hopkins as the matchmaker of the decade a while back. You're very welcome on the show. I'm very grateful that you've come on. So great to see you. How are you keeping?
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to talk boxing, to talk what we love, to talk our passion, have a good time, and also send some messages out to the fans and some of the top fighters that I currently follow.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, to get the juices flowing, we're going to go into a war. It's something that I do at the start of every podcast. So my first question to you, can you tell me what the best decade in the sport is in your opinion?
I got to go with the 80s. I think every generation believes their generation's the best. And back in the 80s, I obviously was young, fell in love with the sport. And years later, I was very fortunate to have started to work into the sport and got to work and meet some of the top athletes and greatest fighters that of our generation now. But through the beginning of that, I became a fan to where we are today. I definitely believe that the 80s were the greatest time. Less divisions, probably less opportunities for fighters as we see today, less titles. Most of the time you had one world champion in a division, but you also saw a lot of figures. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, you have Hall of Famers left and right. I don't know if in today's generation we're going to have more than a handful of Hall of Famers, you know? So you pick any division of the 80s, any division, and I like to pick the welterweight. And if you go from 1 to 10, at any given moment, anyone could have been a world champion. I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran, Pipino Cuevas, Wilfredo Benitez, Carlos Palomino, Pete Ranzani, Andy Price. I mean, you had so many that at any given moment, anybody could have been a world champion. And you go to the lightweights, you had Arguello, Jim Watt, Pambele. You go to the featherweight, Salvador Sanchez, Wilfredo Gomez, Pintor, Zarate. I mean, it just, the list goes on. Aaron Pryor, just so many great fighters around any division. I even remember a very good fighter from the UK, physically so strong, and his will, Tony Simpson, top five, Marvin Hagler, and even though Hagler stopped him, the guy was physically, I mean, a beast, and so strong. And so, again, to answer the question, the 80s. By far, I think the 80s beat the 2000s. The 2000s beat the one from today. So instead of every generation getting better, I think it goes backwards when it comes to boxing.
Yeah, I was having a similar conversation with the guy I know, Curtis Woodhouse, in the sport. He's doing great work as a trainer and was a British champion at that light welter, and was a footballer as well. Crossed over between the two sports. I was having a conversation with him about this, and I referenced something that John the Iceman Scully said a year or two ago when he talked about, and there was a statistic that in 1947 in New York, there were more boxers in the state of New York than there are in the whole of the US today. So and then if you take it a little step further, you think about the proliferation of good athletes into other sports, because the accessibility of other sports now compared to 1947 and availability is so much that you lose so many athletes to other sports because you've got your sports clubs, you've got your kids going into your soccer, obviously into the four big sports in the US, but even more minority sports, say the tennis and other sports. Seen in 1947 was for the working classes and those in the impoverished classes was potentially a way out, but it was also entertainment, it was also exercise, it was also life for a lot of people. That kind of gives you some sense of wow, and helps you understand why boxing may well have actually gone backwards in terms of standard over the years. Now, there's lots of, you could all argue that sports science has moved on certain parts of the sport, but then has the technique and the tactics and the understanding, the experience of the sport, the competitiveness of the sport. Is it better now than it was then? I think a lot of people would argue it wasn't. It's a difficult one that a lot of people will have quite subjective view, depending on which era that they grew up in, which era they look fondly upon, and maybe how closely they are associated with the sport today.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Think back in the 40s, it was a job like any other, a way to make ends meet, a way to make money. Maybe a lot of them like to fight, depending on where they came from, but it became a sport. I think today it became a business. And it's always been the prize fight. Fighters are fighting for money, but I see more of I'm fighting for glory years ago. Today, the younger generation almost feels like, screw glory, I want money. And it became a difference. Again, it's always been about money. You got to provide for your family. That's important.
Right. Yeah.
But if we take that, they call it the four kings. I like to say the five kings because Benitez fits in there and he fought all of them. But they all fought each other. The error was not the most important thing. They didn't have to retire undefeated. They all lost. Hager lost, Hearns lost, Benitez lost, Duran lost, and Sugar Ray lost. However, how many years later are we still talking about that group?
It's the most. I mean, I read the famous book. I forget you probably know the author, but I read the famous book last year on Four Kings, and as you say, many people will refer to the file. But what an incredible sport book, and what an incredible era! Like the hair standing up on the back of my neck. I'm sharing parts of the book. I'm taking pictures, sending it to my friends. I'm so enthused about what's going on in that absolutely epic phase of fights. It was just incredible. So, but the empties that makes a lot of sense. And I think for me, I was a young kid in the 80s. I didn't have all of the boxing that I have on tap today to be able to stream or to watch on different channels. My boxing was a live show, like let's say Baron Grigan and at Loftus Road when he won the world title against Pedrosa.
Pedrosa, I mean that's a great example of names back then. Pedrosa, if I remember correctly, was like on his 15th title defense.
Yeah, he was a legend.
And then here comes this young man who really came out of nowhere worldwide. I mean, he was very well known in the home circuit, but comes out and beats the great Pedrosa. And he had a handicap with height, reach, I mean, everything. But he came on, and I remember I have a good relationship with Barry and his family. And when I first met him, it was now through work, and it was like, wow, I'm here talking to Barry McGuigan, one of the greats from the 80s. Again, yeah, from those times.
Amazing. And because there was less of it on television, as a family, we'd go around and watch the big fights. Even in the UK, let's say, the Tyson fights or whatever would be replayed on at lunchtime on a sports show or sports night on a Wednesday evening at 10:35. And, every week I'll be asking my parents, can I stay up? And I'd watch the likes of, Tony Simpson, Terry Marsh, Mark Kaler, and these kind of boxers from the 80s. It felt more magical because it was harder to touch. Now it's so accessible and we have so much of it that you take it for granted a little bit. So I see it in the same way, but perhaps, obviously with your proximity to all of the superstars and knowing a lot of the people that, made some great in the 80s, it's fantastic. Okay, question number 2. I know you're really big on developing young people through boxing, and I want to ask the question, if you had, and you've been in this position as a manager, you had a precocious young talent in care, as much as you have any young fighter about, which trainer initially would you entrust with their development? Would you entrust with the privilege of taking that kid on a journey within the sport?
That's a great question. Not something that's asked often, but it is asked by fathers, because a lot of times the father of the young man says, well, I want my son to train with the best trainer so he can become the best fighter. And my answer is always, who is the best trainer? The best trainer is for that individual, who that individual really bonds and creates a chemistry. That best trainer logo needs to go, because it depends on that individual. It could be, for instance, I could be the best trainer for A, not necessarily for B, and much less for C. So, when they ask me, please place my son with the best trainer, well, I'd rather send that son to different trainers to see where that son feels the most comfortable, where that son feels like he's learning, where that son is getting motivated, because not every trainer is going to fit for every fighter's needs. So, but it works both ways. There's going to be fighter or trainers that say, look, this guy's a hardhead. He's not picking up what I'm teaching him.
Yeah.
There's no chemistry. Most important, the bond and that chemistry. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's some great trainers out there, but there's also more of the popular trainers, because there's so many teachers and trainers that the world still doesn't know behind the scenes, really doing the training a lot of times, but they're not on the television, they're not in the corner, they're not in that big fight. So those are the ones teaching the day by day. I mean, when you get, I'll give you a little example of a trainer today that gets a lot of respect, and rightfully so. Eddie Reynoso. Why is Eddie Reynoso such a great trainer? Because he developed a young man from A to Z. Canelo Alvarez had never had a fight, never knew how to, throw a jab, right? And Eddie started from A to where he is today, Z. Now, a lot of trainers, and that's nothing bad, it's part of boxing, it's part of sports, it's part of life, a lot of times get credit when they get a fighter that's already been developed. And they take him to that world title fight, the kid wins, and all of a sudden, great trainer, which is fine, because that's just part of luck, also reputation, and also hard work as well, because that's when the fighter says, you know what, I want to take it to another level. If I'm going to fight for the world title, I want to take it to a more experienced trainer. So that sometimes is the stars align for that trainer. But when you take a young man from A to Z and he becomes that big and that great, that's the total package. So, and there's many like that. There's many teachers, and there's also a lot of ones that like to look good on camera. So you have best of both worlds.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, I think, as a fan and someone loosely connected with the sport, I do find it frustrating when family and fighters end up blaming the trainers they've built that bond with over many years for a defeat, and sometimes make a change in haste. When you look back on it at the end of their career, might not have been the right move.
It's the nature of the beast. Whenever a fighter loses, and not all the time, because we've seen, again, Canelo lost a couple times, still with the same team. But a lot of time, when a fighter loses, they have to point, or people start telling them, you need to change this, you need to change that. When everything was going fine prior, everything was good, and the fighter and all the years and talking around is you're the greatest thing on earth, you're the best, nobody can beat you. When you lose, you got to find a reason. Now, every press conference you hear when they interview the fighter, I've never heard somebody say, I've had a bad camp or I've had a so-so camp. I'm always in the greatest shape of my life and I've had the best camp. The fans need to understand, too, that there's no such thing as the perfect camp. There's always something that maybe doesn't come out unless you lose. There's always something, an injury, distractions outside at the house, or something that's going on, whether it's legal battles or spousal battles, but something's always there that if you win, you never hear about it. But if you lose, well, I had a fight with the wife, I had a fight with the coach, that's when you start hearing about it.
Great example. Someone you know well of this fight intimately, giving a relationship with Mark Antonio Barrera, but Nazim Hamed. Win, looks fantastic. Creates this, was the viral effect. Before viral was a thing, he was such a big superstar. And then the one defeat, before you know it, the backstory to it, and I'm sure there was some truth and validity in it. But as you say, every fighter goes into a fight with one or two problems. But if they win, no one talks about it. And that kind of defines that loss and takes it a little bit away from an outstanding opponent who, obviously, three-weight world champion, Hall of Famer. So, it's not like you can turn around and say it was a lucky win. This guy is a legend of the sport. But it's still a bit of a frustration that it kind of takes it away a little bit. But it's the game. It's the game.
It is the nature of the beast. I mean, as a matchmaker for many years at Golden Boy, if somebody lost, if it wasn't the trainer, if it wasn't this, it's the matchmaker. He made the wrong match. Well, wait a minute. You signed up for boxing. When it's a football, when it's a baseball, you don't pick and choose who you're going to face. You have a schedule. In boxing, there comes a point where you can't pick and choose your opponents. At a certain level, it's time to step up. And if it goes wrong, they got to find and point the finger. So that's where you admire those that are willing to fight anybody, that prove it, not just say it. Many say, I'll fight anybody. And when they come, the money has to be there. There's ways out. And again, going back to the 80s, going back to fighters in the past, going back to many fighters today that willingly will fight whoever to be great, you got to applaud them. And that's why we can't write them off if they lose. If they're willing to challenge themselves and maybe take it to a different level that's not in their comfort zone, or that they, on paper, are guaranteed to win. And if they lose, you got to still, back them up. That's one thing I read recently, maybe Joshua should retire. If he wants to, sure. But not because of a couple losses. He's fighting the guys that, I'll fight. I'll take the fight. I think the best fight to make right now, Tyson against Joshua. Hell of a fight for the UK, for the world. Two big heavyweights. They both lost to Usyk. Nation prize, whatever you want. It's still massive.
Huge.
And that could turn into a trilogy.
Huge. Not 95,000 at Wembley. It would sell out in 5 minutes. It would do huge numbers on pay-per-view. It would create so much media interest. But as you say, I mean, I come from a coaching background in sport, really. I've done more from a football side of things. But I look at it, I think it's all about, do they want it? If they want it, they want to compete. They still have a dream. They still have a burning desire, and go do it. If they don't, then okay, that's a different matter. But if they both want to fight, then the world is going to be watching. Not just the UK, but Europe. The world is going to be watching, because Tyson Fury is a huge star across the pond.
Absolutely. And it's actually more interesting, not taking away anything from the great Usyk, But it's actually more interesting when fighters have lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now there's more of a, I need to win.
Yeah.
And both of them will now fight, obviously, to win. But there's a very extra of pride because maybe I can lose to another country, but I can't lose to my own. And that happens a lot when it's, Mexico against Mexico. You see that extra fight. And I think we would see that in Joshua and Fury.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to assume I know what other people are thinking. I see people do it. I hear people talk, make assumptions all day long, and I find it really difficult because no one knows what I'm thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. I'll ask you. You can tell me. I'm not going to make an assumption that I know. I think on this I'm going to make a slight exception because, as we said before, the trappings of success in boxing, the money, the fame, social media, the noise and circus around now compared to what was glory that was still fame, but in a different way back in the day. My fear is that two of the best 4 or 5 heavyweights in the world, fighting in a huge domestic clash, it brings the potential for their brand to be affected if they lose. Whereas back in the day, no one cared about their brand. It was just about the honour, and they were both fighting men, and they would do it in front of the world. But it was a different way of presenting it to the world, and it didn't mean as money then as it does now. So I like I say, that's a roundabout way of saying I think that there must be more for them to consider than just do I want to carry on boxing when it comes to something like that.
Kevin, I think a lot has to do from that generation that came under Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
Because the young generation that grew up watching Floyd, and Floyd promoted, I'm never been beat, I haven't been beat, I'm undefeated, look at the money, look at the fame. You associate with, if I want to be great, successful, and financially set, I have to be undefeated. So with that comes, I can't fight just anybody. I have to pick and choose. It worked for Floyd because Floyd is a generation, one of the greatest we've ever seen lace the drugs.
Sure.
It can't work for everybody. And I think we're getting away from it because when Floyd left, he was replaced by someone who did fight everybody and lost. And yet still is famous, making a lot of money, and one of the top in boxing, which is Canelo. He took risks at higher divisions, lost to Mayweather, but actually learned a lot, gained a lot, and became better after the Mayweather fight. So I think the younger generation now, and we've seen it with Teofimo fighting Lomachenko at an early age, Ryan Garcia fighting Tank early on, Haney fighting a couple of different guys early on, including Ryan. So I think that it's starting to change, and for the good, when young fighters are now saying, look, I want to fight.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. When you talk about Hagler and Hearns, you don't really say, oh yeah, Hearns lost that fight, even though that was the decision, that was the result. You talk about one of the greatest fights we've ever seen.
The shaking our noses when they both perform at their peak in front of the world, put on a spectacle for the world that will last the standard test of time. There are no losers as we look back on it now, but perhaps at the time, particularly if it's been blown up on social media, that's where maybe the narrative would have been different. I agree.
100.
Great comments. One final part. This is a long warm up, by the way, but this is I'm loving it. So, final question to you is: a lot of people talk about the best fighters, power fighters, and I'm going to frame a little bit different. Can you tell me what your favourite streak of fights for one individual fighter from a great fighter over the years has been? You can look at, let's say, Ali or Cassius Clay having a streak over 3-4 years of fantastic results, but then if you take into consideration what he did at the back end of his career, you kind of look at the whole career and you look at someone else. And you compare him with other great fighters, and of course, many people have him as the greatest. But my question to you is, can you remember what is your favorite streak? What do you think is the greatest streak of fights? It could be 3, 4, 5 fights over 3, 4 years, a couple of years, 1 year with 3 fights where a top fighter has performed at their peak in your lifetime, your experience in boxing.
That's a good one. That's a difficult one. I've never really given it that much thought. I think, I mean, just to mine, historically, I would say Sugar Ray Leonard. When Sugar Ray Leonard was at his peak, one of my favorite fighters.
After
I would say before, no, because he beats, yeah, you're right.
It would still be a very credible answer because he performed so well against Duran in that first fight.
I think Duran experience cost Ray the first fight.
Yeah.
Even though it was a good, competitive, close fight, but Duran played a lot of games that you're gonna run, you're gonna be a coward, you're gonna this, you're that, and Ray fought the wrong fight to please, I think, Duran, to show him wrong. But come the second fight, Ray fought his fight and showed how great he really was. But even maybe it wasn't a streak consecutively, but beating Hearns, beating Benitez, beating Duran the second time. I mean, what he did during that period of time, Sugar Ray was amazing. And in a little bit of modern era, I would say somewhere there you have to say something like De La Hoya because, he fought, I believe 1 year he fought 13 times. And even though it was at the beginning, when you talk about today fighters fighting 1 or 2 times in a couple years, activity is one of it is key. Activity is key. Number one, you're building the brand, especially in an era today where brand is so important. You're staying relevant and you're staying in the gym, which keeps you away from distraction, keeps you away from trouble, but you're also staying sharp. I think back in the day, I would say Sugar Ray, obviously not recent, but also years back, I would say De La Hoya. Yeah, I've never been asked, so props. I like it.
Cool. Okay, let's move on a little bit to, you come from a fairly tough part of San Francisco, and I feel very strongly that boxing is such a force for good with individuals and communities. I just want to ask you to reflect a little bit on experiences that you've had where you've seen boxing change people, families, and communities. I mean, give us some of your experience in that space.
Thank you. I really like that question. I came from a gang-infested neighborhood, grew up in gangs at a young age. There was, I'm not going to say there wasn't, but there wasn't really, there was a couple of boxing gyms in the area. They weren't accessible. If you have gyms, especially in rough neighborhoods, you're giving an opportunity to young kids that, and I say this with 100% belief in it, boxing does save lives. Boxing is a life changer. You either lose the kid to the gang, to prison, his life for being in the streets with the wrong crowd, running around, doing something, or they're in the gym. They don't have to become a world champion, a professional fighter tomorrow, but you're teaching them, keeping them busy, keeping them entertained, keeping them focused. They develop a love, a passion, and maybe they grow up to do something else, but boxing is teaching them discipline. And, I mean, one great example is Bernard Hopkins, a Hall of Famer, a legend.
Great example.
Did time in prison, I believe it was 5 years, boxed in prison. Even after leaving, came back to spar, to remind him, to give back to those inmates that, look, it can be done. And he didn't become a statistic that ended up coming back years later. He actually, and take it that he had a huge hurdle because he leaves, he's on probation, so any violation puts him right back in. He loses his first professional fight. Many could throw in the towel and go back to the streets. He stayed on it, disciplined, and became not only a world champion for 10 years in the middleweight division, multiple world champion, Hall of Famer. I mean, that's a story that proves that boxing can change lives and save lives.
He had 2 careers, I would argue, after a 5-year stretch. And he's now, and you know this, maybe you can expand upon it a little bit, given that he's a colleague of yours, but he's such an articulate, impressive guy. In front of the camera, a great ambassador for the sport. He's a
motivational story because of obviously what he went through from growing up in a real tough neighborhood in Philadelphia to the streets to the prison, and then what he did after because he showed discipline. And who he is today physically is not a, the mentality of most fighters is after my fight, I'm on vacation. I can eat, I can drink, I could do what I haven't done during my weeks in camp. His mentality was never like that. And your previous question about a streak, you know what? Bernard Hopkins again, 10 years in the middleweight champion of the world, breaking records. That's a streak in itself right there that is probably not going to be broken. But one time after he lost to Kovalev, I'll never forget this. After he lost to Kovalev.
At the age of about 48. How old was he now?
He was probably 47, 48, because he still went on to fight a couple more years. And Kovalev at the time was just a beast, so strong. And Bernard had he played a lot of mind games with his opponents, and dominated it, and you could never count him out. I mean, whoever thought he was going to be Kelly Pavlik, and he went on and said, I could beat him. Pascal in Canada went on and beat him. Then there was a young bull, Tavoris Clout, went on and beat him. So you could, every time there was somebody, you can't, that's too dangerous. I got him. Watch, I'm going to show you. But I remember Saturday night going in the dress room after the fight. He's on the couch. He said, he was strong. He was big. He was, But Monday morning, he's in the gym. And I didn't understand that. Why? I mean, your body must be hurting. You need a break. He wasn't sparring, but he was lightly shaking it off. And he said to me, when I asked him, he said, I've been working for so many weeks preparing for the fight. Now I have to taper off so the body can recover. So I won't be in so much pain and aches. I slowly taper off. And that made so much sense. But let me ask you, who else thinks like that? That's the last place you're going to find a fighter, especially if they lost, in the gym on Monday.
Maybe young kids who've got a dream who are, hammering their way up the ladder just inch by inch, those inches, and they're looking for that edge, and perhaps they do it. But someone in that situation, with his experience, with his money, and the trappings that money brings, the opportunity to spend time doing other things, to reward himself for that work he's done. And like we said, what a great statement that is, a reflection of mentality.
Yeah, incredible. And I'm sorry, I slid off a little bit tough, but going back to gyms and the support, I'm not saying we have to fill them up so many gyms, but they save lives. These kids need somewhere to be entertained so that they don't find the streets, they don't find the gangs. And obviously, the earlier the better, to have the government support, the community support. We need to support. We need it in the Olympics. How many young kids have the dream to represent their country and win the gold, even if they don't necessarily want to go pro? I think most of the time you prefer to say I represented my country than I won a world title. Let that dream be, something that keeps them in the gyms, keeps them focused, and fulfills dreams. I mean, again, I say it, I mean it, and I believe it. Boxing saves lives.
Amazing. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah. My limited experience in the sport shows me so many, or gives me so many examples that are uplifting, that give, moments and longer periods of success to people who otherwise wouldn't have been granted that, wouldn't have been given the values, wouldn't have the opportunity to be coached and supported by amazing volunteers who just are some of the best people I've ever come across. It's fantastic. So, and look, you've just given me a great segue into another section here on the Olympics and the amateur scenes. Very conscious that you're currently in LA, I believe.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm in LA today. Yeah.
So 2028, there is a big question mark over whether this fantastic sport is going to be part of the Olympics. I'm interested to know what the take is, how it feels over there at the moment. If you can maybe read the temperature a little bit of the boxing community in the US, but also to tell me a little bit about how you see the impact of amateur boxing on professional boxing today.
I think, there's always improvement with the amateur program. I think you do detour a lot of the young kids, trainers, teams, and we see it in pros, we see it in amateurs, a lot of politics and bad decisions. You're killing dreams. And for what? What's really the end game? We definitely need it in the sport. I think it's still a few years right now where people aren't really seeing if it's going to happen or it's not in LA and in Los Angeles, but we really, all of us in boxing have to voice that it does belong in the Olympics. It's been part of history. It's gone on, and Olympic champions have gone on to be great professionals through the years, and not only great for themselves, but also behind them come the young fans that look up to them and want to be them. I mean, I'm a huge fan. My favorite fighter is Muhammad Ali, and Olympics, Sugar Ray Leonard, De La Hoya, all these opened the door to who they became. And even those that didn't medal did some great careers in the amateurs and went on to become great, but also motivation for the younger generation. There's no reason to take it out. Now, why do you discontinue? Why do you take it out? Okay, there's no competitors. We have to shut it down. If no countries are signing up, but when you have so many boxers around the world wanting to represent their countries and wanting to compete in such an international, such an important tournament, you got to leave it open. And with that, it's like we have to voice and push it to continue boxing in the Olympics. It's part of history.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you say, we've touched on probably 4 or 5 Olympic gold medalists in the first few minutes of this conversation without even connecting them to the Olympics. It's just a given that the sport is littered with superstars who have that as part of their journey. And to take that away seems like a huge shame, and it does take away the potential and the vision that a lot of young fighters have in terms of their pathway to success.
Not only that, you're going to also have, if we take it away, young men going pro, maybe too soon, because they didn't have that avenue. And maybe also, not maybe, but you're also financially going to hurt some, because if I would have had the gold medal, I could have got signed to one of the top promoters in the world and financially a big check, starting where I don't have a gold medal, I don't have any medal, and now I got to take whatever's given. So it does change the playing field. So there's no reason to take it away. Now, if you have concerns because you can get injured or you can safety measures. That's we can change the perimeters, we can change the rules, but not cancel it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the whole boxing world with that kind of, I don't know anyone who's said to me, I'm not really bothered about the Olympics. Not one person have I had a discussion with on this subject, where they've said it doesn't really matter.
And this is how important. This is how important, in my experience, the Olympics and the medal is. De La Hoya said many times he would trade all his other belts except the Olympic medal. He says, I could never lose the Olympic medal. That's mine forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
The world title, you can lose them. You know, in an event. And he won many world titles and he won the Olympic medal. So coming from him, you see how much that medal means and how much it would mean to this young generation of upcoming fighters to say, I medaled, or I represent, even if you don't medal, I represented my country. That's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. The Corinthian spirit and the reflection of the values of the sport and its essence, really important. Okay, let's change tack a little bit. I'm going to mention 3 names to you. I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about your memories, and they're all UK fighters. We'll go Stuart Hall, Kevin Mitchell, and Anthony Crowe.
Okay, Stuart Hall. Wow, what a tough son of a gun. Went with Randy Caballero to Monaco. Everything against us. I think it was just a team, and Randy met another couple from Nicaragua or Nicaraguan descent while walking around town, and they ended up going to the fights. It was the corner and that couple cheering Randy on, and it was a hell of a fight. One of my greatest memories when they said, you know, it was a vacant title, when they announced and Neil fighting out of Coachella, California, and seeing Randy and his father embrace.
Yeah.
That was one of my greatest feelings ever. And, you know, as a matchmaker, you go through some tough times. You wanna throw the phone against the wall. That makes up for any of those bad days, because a dream was fulfilled that night. Stuart Hall, one tough son of a gun.
Brilliant.
Kevin Mitchell. Well, even tougher. Take it to the next level. Even tougher. Wow, that guy was hard. And I don't mean hard stylistically, just a hard guy, a rough guy. You knew he came from a tough background, neighborhood, upbringing, and walking into that arena on fight night, hearing the whole 202 arena in his favor, booing of Linares, and I'm just looking like, okay, how is Linares going to react? And I think we saw one of the greatest performances in Linares' career that day. He got dropped. This was the first time in his career where he was dropped and was able to get up and win the fight. In the past, if he had gotten dropped, the fight was pretty much over and he had lost. But this time, he bit down. I remember him telling me when he went down, he remembered the name of his unborn daughter because he didn't know she had been born. I told the team, wife's going into labor during weigh-in day or in the morning of the fight. Please, nobody tell Jorge anything. I need him to focus. And he didn't know that she was born, but when he went down, he thought in his mind, Chloe, Chloe, Chloe. And I think that gave him the motivation to get up, continue the fight, and later go on and stop Kevin. In Jorge's last fight against Castro, we had a surprise visit into the dressing room, and it was Kevin who came in to wish him luck. The beauty of boxing, the bond, after 10, 11 rounds of hell, they became friends, and there's a lot of respect on both sides. And Kevin Mitchell, wish you the best. Always good to see you when I see you, and one tough son of a gun.
And his eye in that fight against Leonard was
And he would have kept going. He would have kept going. The referee did a great job. I mean, he went in and stopped it, but he would have kept going. There was no quit in him.
And he was ahead on cards on maybe two of the judging things. You know, it was a very, very close fight.
It was close towards the end, but the knockdown was the difference, and I think he was ahead on 2 cards. So the knockout and the stoppage came at the perfect time.
Yeah.
Anthony Crolla, I mean, what can I say? Anthony Crolla is a scholar, a gentleman. I could see why there's so much love for him in the city of Manchester. He's such a real, he is 100% real, always smiling. He's one of the guys that you would say he will take off his shirt and loan it to you, or will put his shirt on your back. And I knew him before Jorge fought him. He used to be under Ricky Hatton's stable.
Yeah.
I fought him. I matched him in Vegas at one time.
Okay.
Developed a good relationship with him and Scott Quigg, who I sent my best to both. And then when it came time to match with him against Jorge Linares, obviously we were coming off the Kevin Mitchell win, and now we're going to Manchester. And I remember telling Jorge, remember how loud it was in London? He said, yeah. I said, it's going to get louder in Manchester. He said, that's impossible. It can't be. I said, oh, yes, it can. Manchester fans are diehard. They are an army, and everybody loves Crolla. I don't think I've ever met somebody that could say, I don't like him. He's a bad guy. So everybody likes, I said, so it's going to get even louder there. They shared the ring in 2 tremendous fights, and you saw a lot of heart in Anthony. I think Anthony was one of those fighters that respectfully did more because of his will than because of his technique or capabilities. He had a lot of will, determination, and trained very hard, very dedicated. So he did even more. I mean, became a world champion, fought some of the best fighters in boxing, Lomachenko, Jorge Linares. And he's a kid that him and Jorge share a tremendous friendship to this day, and that I personally have a lot of respect and love for.
Amazing. I was in the second fight, and it was actually heartbreaking is too strong a word, but it was quite deflating because I would say from round 4, round 5 in that rematch, you just saw the class. As you say, Anthony Crolla's got an unbelievable energy. Didn't work to the body. If you can go inside. Obviously, Jorge was just a class apart from me that evening, and it was fantastic to watch such a quality operator. But it was also quite difficult as a British fight fan to see him probably hit his ceiling, because you thought you felt after the first fight. Actually, it was a real close fight. It was maybe a 7-5, or it was that time really kind of 1-5 or 3. He wasn't too far off that, maybe 1-6, 1-2. You knew he was in with a shot. Could he make the adjustments for the second fight? And the reality was that he couldn't, because there was always going to be that gap between the two. So it was the atmosphere to start off with, anticipation, fantastic, but it dissipated really quickly. And that's not great for the entertainment side of things, but you have to just sit there as a fight fan and watch a guy like Linares go to work, and he was a class act. And I have to say, that was the first time that I really started to watch and listen to you speak in public. Obviously, you've been involved in industry for a long time by that point, and had so many fantastic experiences and guided so many fantastic fighters. But the British fight fans, with Mitchell, obviously, then into the Crolla Linares, and since then, you've had, appears to me to be, I really love it with British fight fans. And the way that you and Linares, the way that you guys conducted yourselves, the sport's full of people who want to talk up fights, who want to create noise, and sometimes do it in a negative way, or what I perceive to be a negative way. I understand it's the business. That's fine. It's not what I would be pointing my son at in terms of an example, and the way that Linares, represented himself, his family, you, and the way that you spoke on his behalf in the lead up to the fights. Staying with me, to this day, you won a lot of fans in that period of time, Robert.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. I've never thought about, I see it with other teams. I've seen it with some fighters or trainers that I'm with, and I don't like it. I don't support it, and I try to right away change that, because you're, first of all, even if you're visiting another country, you go in there respectfully. Now, if they don't treat you respectfully, that's different. That's very different. But
yeah.
there's no need. Again, like you said, it is a business. You got to hype it up. But let it be natural. It's not WWE. It's not wrestling. This is real. We don't play boxing. Let it be natural. There was a lot of respect. And Jorge, in general, he's very respectful. I can't go to Jorge and say, I need you to spice this up and say this, and that. He'll turn around and laugh and be like, it's not natural. So remember, even though he's Venezuelan, he grew up in a Japanese culture. So he's very, very Japanese, even though he's born in Venezuela. And Japanese have a very respectful dynamic. I mean, that's who they are, and that's how we grew up, and especially under who we grew up. Akihiko Honda, Mr. Honda from Japan, very respectful in the world of boxing, and he expects that from his fighters. So, and then on the other side, you have a young man that was very respectful, and they admired each other and understood, we're going to give the fans a hell of a fight, but there's no reason for us to be fighting outside of the ring. And I'll remind you, on that second fight, I remember Joe Gallagher ready to stop the fight. I believe it was the 10th or the 11th round. He was ready to stop it. And Anthony pleaded with him, no, please. So they let him go on. And he finished with his head up and in his with a lot of pride. So I respect that. He could have easily said, okay, stop the fight, but that wasn't him. That's not him.
Fantastic comments. I obviously, as you say, you had experience with Manchester. You've been to Manchester with Ricky when Golden were promoted. How was that, the 55,000 at the City of Manchester Stadium as it was then?
We touched base on my favorite era, the 80s, but my favorite moments in boxing was Ricky Hatton. Growing up, going to Chavez fights and seeing how much fans love from Mexico and our hero from Mexico. Even at Canelo fights today, going to some of the biggest events, when he fought Triple G and even Floyd and Cotto. The Hatton army was so different, even in Vegas. But going back after the defeat, I was talking to Ricky's dad, Ray, and, what do you think, this and that, after the Floyd fight. And it's like, I think a fight back home in gratitude for all those that traveled is the thing to do. And we discussed a couple opponents, and I worked on helping them to put together a fight against Lozano. Wow. Ray calls me 2 or 3 days, I think 2 days after tickets went on sale, and said, Robert, we sold record-breaking 50,000 tickets, or, it was a huge number. 2 days, 3 days, I was like, oh my God, But I had seen how many had traveled to Vegas, even without tickets. And it surprised me because I had never heard of it. But it didn't surprise me because I saw what Ricky meant. And when I was out there, I was in Manchester for 3 weeks in camp with Ricky prior to the Mayweather fight. And there wasn't one individual that, whether it was a taxi driver, whether it was the lady that made the sandwiches at the little market, where anybody wherever you went, they would pick up that I was a foreigner, I wasn't from there. Hey, where you from? No, well, Mexican, but I live in the U.S. And Ricky's name would come up. Oh yeah, we know Ricky. Everybody knew Ricky. Either they had a pint with him, they played darts with him, or everybody had a story to be told about Ricky. And that was just amazing how much they loved Ricky Hatton. And it was just a memory that will never, I mean, I think we've seen before or after, nobody's had that impact or that following like he had.
Yeah, he inspired and captured the hearts and minds of, like you say, tens, hundreds of thousands of crossover fans, football fans who were large, a large proportion of his fans were Man City fans. They took that with them. A bit just works with Leeds. It does help that. But Ricky, as a working class hero, the people's champ, as well as one of the greatest boxers that the country's ever produced, and at the time one of the greatest boxers in the world. He was pound for pound, top 10 boxer. To put all that together is very special.
I remember prior to the Mayweather fight in Vegas, we're now in Vegas. We'd go after the gym, walk around the mall, just, some time off. He'd have his coffee. American fans recognizing him. They didn't know him, but they saw the 24/7, the build-up, and they would come over and say, "Hey, you're that guy that's fighting Mayweather, right?" And, yeah, that's me. Kick his ass. Come on. We're with so many fans started to, 24/7 did so good for boxing because the buildup was just
Amazing.
So intense and so much drama that you wanted to watch the fight so bad. And he made so many fans because he was the good guy fighting the villain.
Yeah, and he played up to the crowd. He does fantastic stand-up and speak after the speaking now anyway. He's just an incredible character. He's one fans. I don't think we'll ever see 30,000 fans travel abroad anywhere, let alone, across the Atlantic. So wonderful. Okay, I want to talk about matchmaking for a little bit, Robert, if we can do. Basically, 15 years ago, boy, you made your reputation and, a real difference to a lot of football in the greatest fighters of the era. I understand a little bit about what it would feel like day to day to be a matchmaker. Are you going into the gym? You watching the sparring? Are you looking at the S&C stuff? Are you looking at the nutrition? Are you looking at what the opponents do? Are you really that close to the fighters in their day to day life? Because I know it's not management, but you clearly have to represent and understand the fighters you're saying to them, and then obviously have this fantastic, almost encyclopedic knowledge of the marketplace and potential opponents wherever they may come from. So I mean, are you literally looking at the details, like I say, maybe talking to the trainers, talking about what they're doing and how they're developing as fighters, or is it a little bit sort of a level above that?
I wish I could say that yes, I was more hands-on to like how you mentioned, but we were so busy at the time with such a large stable and so many events going on that it was going to be very difficult to give that type of attention to the individual fighter or all the fighters of the card and then still have time to go on and work on the events. I wish I could say that because if you have a smaller stable or not as frequent cards, maybe you could do it that way and it would be very helpful and useful. But at the time, what I always like to do is fight by fight, put different styles, and see the progress. For instance, you've never fought a left-hander, a southpaw. Okay, now it's time because eventually you're going to fight him or somebody much taller. You start putting different obstacles to see the progress. Oh, he had a lot of trouble with this guy who moved. Okay, try not to get a mover on the next one so that can work on the gym. Start putting movers, start getting them ready, bring them back. Let's get another mover on the back foot. Okay, he's closing the corners now. He's closing off the ring, cutting it off. Okay, he's progressing. Or taking a step back. Okay, now let's slow it down. So each individual is very different, but you throw different styles to see how they overcome them. A good example during my time at Golden Boy was Virgil Ortiz. You put everything in front of him, and he was knocking them out faster than expected. He was passing with flying colors. So every time you'd step it up a little more and step it up a little more. He fought a couple former world champions really early on. He fought a kid, Juan Carlos Salgado, who had knocked out Jorge Linares to win a world title from him years before. So in his developmental stage, he was passing everything with flying colors. And look, today, I'm so proud of him. Undefeated, world champion. It wasn't easy to get there. He had a lot of obstacles, but he overcame them because he's one of the most disciplined, talented, and a fighter that we talked earlier that is willing to face the best. Not just saying it. He doesn't care, or he's not worried about what if I lose. Boxing is for challenges, and he wants to be great and test himself against the great. And look, he has a very, very tough fight coming up.
I was just about to say that it's a very tough fight. I don't know what's going to give him, going to give him a look that's going to be a real challenge to him. He definitely got the talent to win that fight, but it's a really tough one to call. I thought Madrimov was outstanding against Crawford.
Yeah, and they know each other. Look, Madrimov trains with a good friend, Joel Diaz, who trained in the past, trained Virgil. So that's an insight, that helps them. So it is a very difficult, a very tough fight, but it's the character of Virgil Ortiz. This is who he is. And I can tell the public right now that's listening and those that will listen later that you have, as good as Madrimov is, and we saw it with Crawford, I was actually one of two that picked Madrimov to win that fight. And I'm a big fan of Crawford. I've told Crawford myself that he reminds me, he's the modern day Marvin Hagler. He's a fighter that has that it's something different about him. However, I picked Madrimov at the time prior to the fight because he didn't have the pressure. Pressure was really more on Crawford, and he was physically the bigger guy.
Yeah.
I think the fight was very close. Could have gone either way. I think, the right guy won in Crawford. I think he was a little busier, especially towards the end. But I think in this coming fight, it's going to be a great fight, and people are going to realize how good Virgil really is, because we haven't seen the best of Virgil, because the opponent hasn't brought it out. Now, the last fight, we saw a hell of a fight of the year. But let's remember, Virgil had been out so long and only done 2 rounds in 2 years. So this fight, we will see the real Virgil, in my eyes, in my opinion.
But matchmaking, I would assume, will also require you to have a harness to your character, to your personality, to be able to deal with conflicts. Sometimes, ultimately get what you need to get done through the business day, representing the people and the organization that you represent. Have you had, without going into detail, have you had those situations throughout your career where you've kind of had to turn on, you won't like me when I'm angry coming over, like Mr. T or whatever it would be?
100%. When I've traveled abroad, it's one thing when and I'm not saying because it's better. I love traveling abroad. I love going to different countries. I like seeing how it's different. I learned there to apply it when I have fighters in our country, in our backyard, or in our promotion. But sometimes it is hostile. And you just got to remind your fighter, your team, hey, we're not here on vacation. We're here to work. Don't expect the red carpet every time. That not everybody does that. They're trying to take what's yours, especially when you have the champion or you have that rank. And I still try to keep it professional without getting, especially because, hey, you never know what they can do if you're in their countries. But I become a little bit less pleasant and cordial. I become more firm because at the end of the day, I'm there to fight for our rights and defend our fight. And I'll give you an example. I make a fight for the world title with Pali Malignaggi versus Dibrachenko. No, sorry. Senchenko. Fight gets done. One of the requests that Pali had was, please want to make sure that this referee is not in charge of my fight. So I go to the organization, discuss that possibility. I mean, it wasn't a out of the question type request. So he said, no problem. We're going to have so-and-so. So I get to Ukraine. Paulie's getting on a flight in Italy to Ukraine, and he calls me and he says, "Hey, why is referee so-and-so on my flight?" So I said, "I don't know, Paulie. There's other title fights on your card. He might be doing one of the other ones. Don't worry about it. I'll see you here." Now it's media day, and the referee's doing interviews. May he rest in peace, a great, great referee. And he says how excited he is and how it's going to be a great fight and blah, blah, blah. And he mentions, yes, I'm doing the Paulie Malignaggi Sergenko fight. And now Paulie heard it and it's going crazy. And what's going on, Robert? So now I'm like, yeah, I gave him my word. So I have to go to the promoter. The promoter said she's the only one qualified. That's who we run. He's the biggest name. It's like having a Michael Buffer or Jimmy Lennon. So I have to call the organization and protest. Now I'm the troublemaker. I said everything was going to be smooth to tell the referee. I mean, I started moving around too many pieces, and now I'm not welcome so much. Now I'm looked at as a troublemaker.
Sure.
But then it goes further. Paulie requested to wear Everlast gloves. In the contract, it said promoter will provide gloves. So come weigh-in day, the promoter pulls out 2 pairs of gloves for him to pick fighting pair, and then the backup. I open a bag and dump it on the table with 6 other pairs. And the promoter and the commission, everybody's like, no, you can't use these gloves. Now, they're all identical, wrapped, sealed. I have a letter from Everlast that with the numbers and everything were sent to me. Paulie just had that thing where he needed to try every glove and make sure which one he wanted and requested that for me. So I provided it. And it became a big issue with the promoter and the commission. And they bring out the contract and say, it says clearly here, promoter will provide gloves. And I said, yes. Where's the violation? Well, they're the promoter. I said, no, but I'm his promoter, so I'm providing the gloves.
Yeah, doesn't it define that one promoter provides the both?
Exactly. So that helped me keep it in relationship that I'm not violating the contract. I'm providing the gloves for my fighter. In fact, any glove that's not picked here, you guys can use them for your gyms, for your other fights, but that wasn't what
so that was. So just on the contract small print there, then that was being promoted by Ukrainian, Russian K2 or something like that. Yeah,
correct. I don't remember. Huh?
The event itself has been promoted, but when it's set in the contract, the promoter doesn't define the promoter of the event or the promoter of the fight, and if there's wiggle room, you can define it yourself as the promoter as the contract, right?
It's universally understood that the promoter of the event will provide the gloves.
Yeah.
But the only way out that I had to not make it think like I'm defying or I'm just playing hard is I understood that I had to provide the gloves as the promoter of him and you for your guy. So it was a little bit of acting a little stupid, but it was like,
but
okay, Paul, you got the gloves you wanted. Now let's stop making problems. Eventually, I had a conversation with Paulie. The organization switched the referee and moved one of the judges to the referee and the referee to as a judge. And then I had a good conversation with Paulie, and I said, listen, just my opinion. I got what I promised you done. Here's the letter. Here it is. However, I think we're going to have a very upset judge before the bell rings. I think we're going to have a referee who's normally not a referee and not an experienced referee guiding your fight. Paulie, let's really think this through.
This is your interest.
And we switched it back around. And Paulie gave the news to the referee. I want you back. I think it was a misunderstanding. Please be the referee for my fight. Now the referee's going like, what are these guys? They're crazy. I got to go back to the promoter and say, hey, it's all promotion and and this and that, but no, it's how you had it. So now they're thinking, what is going on with these people? Now continues fight night, Europe, the commission assigns you the adrenaline. So as we're walking over to the corner, they approach me and give me a bottle of solution, but it's open. And obviously they make it, and it's doctors and they put it together, get the adrenaline. But I can't read because it's all in a different language. So I said, I can't use this. It's open. I don't know what it is. Oh, no, it's adrenaline for your fight. I can't use this one. Okay, they switch the bottle. They give me the other one and say, here's Sajenko's, and he'll use yours. It's the same thing. And I said, oh, I know that. No, I can't. And I bring in Paulie's cup man, Donnie Milano, and I said, show me your adrenaline. He opens a box, takes it out, unopened. It says there, the adrenaline, 100 or 1000. No, we can't use that. It's our rules have to be. I bring in the supervisor for the organization. I said, we have a problem here. It got fixed. He got it. Now, it gets worse. Well, good and bad, because Paulie goes on and wins the world title. Paulie wins by knockout. Paulie had like 5 knockouts in his whole career and knocks out the undefeated world champion. And I'm like, the whole team starts celebrating in the ring. I'm looking at the promoter. I'm looking at all the staff looking at us like, I said, guys, please stop celebrating. Let's get into the dressing room. Let's get on the plane and let's go home. Please, let's get out of here. Congratulations, but let's go. It was, Kevin, a real-life Rocky movie for me. I was so happy, so excited. I mean, here you have Paulie, the Italian, Rocky Balboa going out there and beating the undefeated big guy, Ukrainian, to win the world title. It was a real-life Rocky. I mean, it is something that I'll never forget. Paulie and I joke about it today, but it was just an amazing moment to be in a stadium in a hostile territory. Not that they were treating us bad, no, but you could feel it. And a lot of it was won with this. It wasn't so much physical. I think Paulie, we beat the champ before the bell, because he looked at Paulie like, wow, I'm fighting Paulie Malignaggi, which later went to his favor because he went on and fought Ricky Hatton. But I think he had learned the big fight experience, and unfortunately, he beats Ricky because Ricky had been out so long.
Yeah.
And that, obviously, even Paulie was hurt because he was hoping Ricky would win, and then they'd fight again, do the rematch. So, but that was one of those moments where, and there were several, there was others. I had one, and I'll be quick on this one, where we had a fight in Mexico. It was a world title eliminator. I'm the last one to show up to the venue. It had been raining. I had made sure that all the other fighters were getting in the transports to get them to the venue. It was open baseball stadium. And when I arrive, a coworker tells me we have a big problem. And it was raining. And I said, yeah, I know it's raining. Remember, we're outdoors. And he says, no, it's bigger than that. I said, well, it'll never snow in Cozumel, which is across from Cancun. He goes, no, Robert, stop joking. But you try to not let anything, there's no such thing as a perfect show. So you just try to go through the hurdles as calm, as relaxed, and turn off fires. Correct. So I tell him, what's the problem? He says, the main event, the opponents are threatening to cancel the fight. They're not going to fight. You mean they're not going to fight? So I walk in there and I talk to the attorney and representing the other fighter. And I said, what's wrong? What's the issue? That ring's illegal. That ring's too small. We're not fighting in that ring. I said, did you measure it? And he pulls out measuring tape. He says, yeah, actually we did. And I'm like, oh. The contract stated would make best efforts to get a 20 by 20.
Yeah.
Or if not, because it was an island. It wasn't in the city. It was an island. You got to get a ferry to go across. Or whatever the local commission approves. Well, the ring was 18 by 18 inside. I said, let's go over to the commission and say, obviously, you've approved this fight. You guys were all here. And they said, yeah, we did. I said, okay. So by contract is clearly there. We have a fight. He says, well, we're not fighting. That's when I said, okay. Then if you're not fighting, I don't need you here. I'm going to get shuttles, take you back to the hotel. I shuttled them all in. I put them in the shuttles, and I said, go. If it would have been a money thing, they would have told me right there, well, if you pay a little bit more money, which maybe you could sit down and negotiate, okay, you know. But at that point, I'm thinking we're playing poker. So I stood outside the venue, and my coworker's like, what are you doing? I said, 5 minutes. They're going to come back. Well, 15 minutes. Remember, it was raining. 15 minutes went by. I'm soaking wet. That car never came back. So now I'm like, okay, we got to go back in the venue and change everything. So obviously let the TV know we're moving the co-main event to main event. We're moving it, make the movements, and let's go. That fight didn't happen, but it was that side defending what they believe was in the best interest for their fighter.
Was there any legal consequences after that?
No, I don't know if that fight was ever even made or if we went a different route and fought, because there was a world title eliminator. They might have redone the fight somewhere else or something. But yeah, I don't remember if they ended up fighting later on. But at that point, we just, look, the show must go on.
Great insight. That's what we're here for. Great insight into, you know, your experience as a matchmaker in big fights around the world. And we don't get to hear this. I mean, probably the most famous example of that type of pre-fight concert would be maybe Fury Klitschko and the width of the surface of the ring, the depth, should I say, that there was an issue there that I think McKenzie and Fury picked up on. But apart from that, you don't really get these details in the public domain very often, maybe because there's legal consequences I don't know. Great to hear what actually goes on behind the scenes. Okay, Robert, we're coming towards the end. A couple of things to finish on. You talked about Randy Caballero in Monte Carlo in Sugar, the embrace between the father and the son. You're a former probation officer as well, and so your pastoral care and that love and that care for young fighters, young athletes is clearly close to your heart. You're now president of Sheer Sports, managing and guiding your athletes. Does it feel like the right place to be at this stage in your career after all that you've experienced so far?
Yes, it's I think there's a saying that says God's times are perfect. And I think at my age now, there was opportunities to go into other promotional companies and picking up where I left off. And that is my passion, matchmaking. I love matchmaking. But it was like, do I really want to be on the road every weekend? Do I really want to go through the stress? There's a lot of stress in matchmaking. You'll get calls at 20. My phone is never off. Never off. Even to this day, I just can't turn it off. I did it at the time. It started because when I first started at Golden Boy, my family was in Northern California. I was living here on my own. So it was like, and the reason for that was I didn't know if it was going to work for me working for Golden Boy. What if I'm not going to move everybody over to Los Angeles and then 2 or 3 months later find out, you know what, I don't like it. They don't like it.
Especially when the third went wrong, right?
The first two events, I almost quit. Because there wasn't really a training period of, look, this is shadow me and this is what you do. It was basically sink or swim. And they were two very stressful and draining type events, which were smaller events, but they had the unexpected. After that, it was smooth sailing for 15 years. Those two fights were like 2 years of training in probably a couple months. So they prepared me for everything. But during 8 months, I was living in LA, so my phone would always be on in case my wife needed to reach out to me. From there on, it became a custom because making fights from all over the world, there's different time zones of people calling or texting or emailing. So it became a habit, and it's still a habit to this day. I try to turn it off on Sundays, but outside of that, it's always on. And with that was you learn to, as a matchmaker, all the stresses. I'm not going to make weight. I missed my flight. I didn't pass a medical. So, the hardest thing as a matchmaker was always for me is going to you, your team, your fighter, the fighter themselves, and saying, you're not fighting. I'm sorry, we lost the opponent, and I could not come up with a replacement. And the reason it was so difficult for me was I know the sacrifices. I was in camp with a fighter for many years, Marco Antonio Barrera. I know the cutting weight, leaving the family, everything that they go through, and being so emotionally connected to that fight night because they want to perform and they want to show their fans and their family and themselves, and to be able to go a day before, because whenever the cancellation that you can't get done is 24 hours before. It's not 2 months before, a week before or something. It's always a couple days before, and that's when it gets difficult. So that was always the hardest thing for me. So as a matchmaker, or now shifting over, I decided, you know what is it? I love boxing. I got to stay in boxing. I was very fortunate that Sure Sports contacted me. We sat down, we discussed. I had worked with them through the years at Golden Boy. Great team. They really do a lot for their fighters. They had a good, decent stable, but it was like, all right, let's get ready to take it to another level and go out and look for young, solid talent that can take it to that next level. And it's been a beauty. It's been slower, which is healthier for me at this age. But you still matchmake because now you're doing it for the individual.
Yeah.
Because once a matchmaker, always a matchmaker. Anything that comes with you, oh, wait a minute, I like the record, but I don't like the style. He's not going to make us look good. It's going to be awkward. It's not beneficial for them, and it's not beneficial for us. So you're always thinking like a matchmaker, but you're just applying it now on the other side of the desk. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It suits you as well because
Thank you.
You put in your service and committed, on that treadmill for a long time, and it's such a high profile role that I'm sure that whilst you're still living the sport and breathing the sport, that having a little bit more time to relax is probably a good thing as well. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
You sacrifice a lot because you're on the road so much. For 15 years, it was work first, work second, then family. Today, I try to make it first family, second myself, and third work, because you realize that life's too short. I've had some little battles here and there over the last couple of years that, thank God, I'm still, healthy and fine and feeling great, better than ever. But you try to take it a little bit slower and less personal.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. And we're all pleased to hear that, Robert.
Thank you.
It's really good news to hear, and may that continue for a long time. So let's close off with some current affairs. We've got some fights coming on. I want to ask you just very quickly about the return on what I think is the most early fight in the sport between Beterbiev and Bivol in the light heavyweight division, and then obviously talk about your boy Mr. Roach versus taking on Tank Davis in what will be an incredible fight, I'm certain. Yeah, that's the Bivol. How do you feel about the rematch there?
I love it. I love that it's happening right away. No interim fights. I think that's how it should be when you have such a good first fight. And I'm not going to call controversial. I'm not going to call robbery. I thought Bivol won the fight, but when you think he wins, any fighter wins by 1 round, it could be 1 round for the other side or it could be a draw. So I don't see controversy. I just see a high level of IQ, a high level of talent that you're going to get a very close fight. If they fight 10 times, I believe 10 times will be close. Unless you get like if we remember Pacquiao and Marquez 4 times, all 3 were very close until they wanted to finish this controversy, end it, and that made one commit a little bit more, and he got caught. So I see Bivol winning in a very good and very close fight. And I don't see, at least not right away, the third one. I think Bivol will win close, but not controversial. I think he did the right thing. I think he boxed when he wanted to. He threw the punches when he wanted to. He had Beterbiev coming forward. I think he did what he was supposed to in order to win the first fight, but I think it'll be done even clearer this time.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I have to say, I thought Bivol was outstanding, really outstanding, and yet I felt he just lost out in a very, very painful decision that could have gone either way. And as you say, I don't think anyone can cry robbery. It's unfortunate for the person who doesn't get a decision, but I agree with you. He was masterful in terms of the way that he negated Beterbiev's strength. This is the guy who stopped 19, was it 19 or 19 to that point? Free, and that's free in terms of how hard he hits. Yeah, look, it was phenomenal, number one. And it is an industry fight. It's a trade fight, right? It's not. It doesn't have the appeal. You know, a lot of the crossover fans probably watched it because of the hype and probably felt a little bit short-changed because they weren't seeing what they've deemed to be entertainment.
They didn't, a lot of times they don't see as fans the IQ. There was no knockdowns. It can't be great.
Yeah.
It should have been back and forth knockdown. That's happened. Yeah, that as a fan as well. I love that. I love seeing back and forth. But a lot of times that's when there isn't that high level of IQ. There's mistakes that happen, and that's what causes one getting knocked down or the other. Many times you hear Canelo, he hasn't come back from a cut or a knockdown, and nobody's had the capacity to drop him. It's not his fault. If he does get dropped, I'm sure he'll get up and come back and fight. But it's not his fault that nobody's had that capacity to drop him. Even Triple G, who had or everybody claimed that had, one of the biggest punches in boxing history, which he had shown through the years, caught him with some great shots and didn't even buckle him. So it all depends on that, where it's coming from and who's receiving it. I mean, we saw an exciting fight with Wilder and Fury. But a lot of them, both of them make mistakes and both of them get caught. And yes, it makes it exciting for the masses, but we also didn't see a masterpiece in setting up mistakes and feints. And, they were there to land the big punch.
Totally. It was loose, wasn't it? So from a technical perspective, if you wanted to break it down, I really feel analytical kind of coaches going to look at this up and find so many things that needs to be done better next time around. But that brings entertainment. So great points. Okay, and then finally on your boy Lamont, you must be super excited.
I am. I'm very excited. I'm very happy for him. I'm very proud. And I won't blame the fans. I just tell the fans, look, wait till you see the fight and then give judgment. Don't knock it before you try it. And you can't say I don't like this food if you haven't tried it before. So what I can say is there was other opportunities. People, it's for the money. No, there was another opportunity where the money was same, but nobody knows the other fighter worldwide. Everybody knows Tank. Everybody respects Tank. I'm a big fan of Tank. I became a big fan of Tank after the Martin fight because I realized that Tank finally looked like he grasped the idea and became not only a beast inside the ring, but an entertainer. Came out with the Ghostbuster shirt and smiled and played with the mind of the opponent. He took it to another level. Tank's pound for pound one of the best fighters in boxing, without a doubt. I love that because, look, nobody's giving us a chance. But that's when fighters that believe in themselves can prove everybody. And this is motivating for Lamont. Lamont's not had that big come-out party yet, and we're not expected. But when we do, people are going to be like, where did he come from? Who is this kid? You know, because he believes it. He has the talent. And most importantly, Tank knows who he is. He's not taking them lightly because they know each other very well. Not only because they fought in the amateurs many years ago, they've sparred many times. They know each other. They know there's no, I'm not afraid of you type atmosphere or feeling. And Lamont can really fight, and he's hungry. Now, a lot of times I keep reading and hearing, oh, he keeps fighting the little guy. He keeps fighting the smaller guy. Tank's not a big guy. Tank, last fight, he weighed 133. Lamont's fought above 135. Lamont's physically the bigger guy. If you see him today, more than a month away, you'll say, oh, Lamont's the bigger guy. Tank's the smaller guy. I mean, people are going to be surprised. Again, Lamont's fighting and bringing everything. He's coming for history. I was with him about a week ago in camp. He's training in Plant City. And we still got a good month to go. I'm excited. The kid deserves it. And look, people are saying he's going to get beat. Okay. We're going to prove him wrong. Remember, boxing, the beauty of boxing is nothing's ever written in stone. Records are meant to be broken. And outside of Floyd, everybody's going to beat. Tank, you're a great fighter. March 1st, history is going to be made. There's going to be another great fighter.
The eyes of the world are going to be on the event, and I'm sure Lamont is going to be well prepared. It's going to have you, in his corner as he's always had. So I think it's fantastic. And look, we're going to watch with interest to the fight. But I wish you well, and I wish the team well, because, as you say, it could well be a historic night and a night that really gives you another one of those incredible experiences that you've had times, thankfully, in your career. Robert, all that remains to say from my side is, first of all, very, very grateful that you gave me the time to have this really, really far, wide-reaching discussion. We've covered a lot of topics. I've absolutely loved every minute. It's flown by. I want to wish you all the very best with not only sheer sports, but also just in life in general, because, one of life's good guys who's done it the right way is, as I say, I probably blown a lot of smoke with your backside in this call, but I mean it when I say the way that you conducted yourself left something with me back, what was it, 10 years ago plus now, and that literally today is an example of what this sport can be, and how people can represent themselves and be successful in this sport with some of the greatest nature you've imagined in the sport. So, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too.
Kevin, I have, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity and very grateful for your words. And I hope we can do it once again after Lamont wins and bring him on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Have some Iberico and a paella for me when you're out there. What part of Spain are you in?
In Malaga. We've been here for 8 years. My Spanish is not as good as yours, although I have to say, I would probably understand you when you speak Spanish better than I understand the Malagueños, because they speak so quickly.
So fast.
It's not más o menos here, it's más o menos.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Take care of yourself. Stay in touch. And all the best, man. Take care. Cheers.